I'm sorry. This is getting embarrassing. It is getting absolutely embarrassing. And look, I've made plenty of videos here talking about one Bronny James, Mr. LeBron James Jr., who I stand by this when I say he is the worst 6'2" guard in the history of the NBA. There have been worse players than Bronny James. The only worst players than Bronny James have been project players, as in 7-footers who don't really know how to play basketball, and teams are like willing to take risks on them, or like lengthy, like freak athletes that teams are like, okay, maybe they're going to be something. And they're the only players in the history of the NBA that have been worse players than Bronny James. And I mean that. Like, he's been terrible. And now we're hearing this. So, this is from Brian Windhorst. The Lakers are only allowing him to play in home games. He's going to play in home games. He's only going to be a part-time G League player. He's not getting on United Airlines to fly to these road games. I know he's getting somewhat special treatment and nepotism. That's fine. I don't care. Like I said, it's normal. Now I think it's actually detrimental to him. I don't like that. I don't know whose idea it was, but obviously the Lakers are fine with it. They're doing it. On this particular instance, I think that's gone too far, and I don't think it benefits Bronny. I don't think it benefits the South Bay Lakers. I don't think it benefits LeBron at this point. You know it's bad when Windhorst, of all people. You know it's bad when Brian Windhorst is calling out LeBron James. Like, we've never seen a second-round pick get this much coverage. Why would the Prince of the King ever fly anything but a private plane? Like, that's the reality of it. And the worst part is like, that's like the reality of this is like, oh, I'm above you guys. Because I'm sorry, he's not getting on United Airlines to fly to road games. Go fly first class. Fly first class. If you're not able to go on the private planes, if you're not able to get your private plane, fly first class. But to be honest, he's Bronny James. He could probably, if LeBron said to the Lakers, you know what, for all of Bronny's games, you have to get Bronny James, book him a private flight. They would do it. They'd do it. Like $50,000 a flight. Yeah, it's worth that to bring Bronny James. But the reality of the situation is that there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. And by the way, we have to say it like it is. Like, pretending Bronny James is a good basketball player at the NBA level, pretending Bronny James is a good pro level basketball player. I don't even mean at the NBA level. Pretending that Bronny James, if he decided to go play overseas, would not be playing in a starter league, as in Armenia, or is Armenia's probably too low, but an Albania, an Ireland, an Azerbaijan, a El Salvador, if he was in South America, like, they're the type of leagues that he would be in. Like, if he tried to come out of college and play pro basketball. That's the reality of the situation. But for people being like, it doesn't benefit Bronny, it doesn't benefit the South Bay Lakers, there's a reason why Bronny James is not staying with the South Bay Lakers and he's not playing with the G League. Because it's not about developing Bronny James. It's about capitalizing off the sideshow that is Bronny James. And look, I feel bad for Bronny. I feel bad for Bronny because he's not being treated as a basketball player. He is being treated as a sideshow. He is being treated as a ticket seller. He is going to probably never play an NBA game once LeBron retires. He is there to be a sideshow. For lack of a better word, like, this is very, like, yes, he is better than Julian Newman, but this is no different than if Julian Newman, if a team drafted Julian Newman to just parade him around back when he was popular. It's no different than imagine if in 2021, or was it 2020 when he went for the draft, when Shaq Wes went into the draft, when he entered the draft. It would be like if they had brought, who was the rapper that played preseason for the Raptors? I can't remember off the top of my head. He's literally like, imagine if a team decided to just give a roster spot to a celebrity that was nowhere near good enough to play in the NBA and basically use them as like a ticket seller. Oh, maybe you can go and see the circus act at the end of the game. Maybe if we're blowing a team out, we're getting blown out, we can put in the circus act. Because that's the way he's being treated. The reason why he's not down with the G League, the reason why he's only playing home games is you don't make money from gate revenue for away games. You don't make money from that. He is there to make them gate revenue on South Bay Lakers games. He is there to play home Lakers games and the intrigue of watching Bronny and LeBron James might get more people to buy tickets. He is there for the story. He's there for the narrative. He's there to make the Lakers a little bit of money. And yeah, he will make the Lakers more than the $8 million. Bronny James is not a member of the Lakers to play basketball. It's like when, in Like Mike, when they signed Calvin Cambridge and they were like, to a deal, and he goes to the coach like, am I going to play? And they were like, no, you're just kind of here for show. Like, it's the equivalent of them signing Calvin Cambridge. It's the equivalent of some dude going out at a halftime show, cooking LeBron in a 1v1 if he did it, and then the Lakers just saying, you know what, we're going to sign him, and then just keeping him on the bench and playing him pity minutes. Like, that's what Bronny James is the equivalent of. There's a reason why people are like, oh, it's detrimental. It's detrimental for him. He needs to go to G League to develop. No, he doesn't, because he's never going to develop. That's the problem. He's not even good enough for the G League. Like, there's no point being like, send him to the G League to develop. You send him to the G League, and he goes and has as many turnovers as points. And, like, if you sent him to a league like Puerto Rico where they have import limits, he would have been shipped home. Like, there are a lot of leagues. There are so many leagues where he just wouldn't, with the import limits, where if you put him in leagues overseas, he'd be sent home. If you tried to put him in, even if you tried to put him in Leboro, the second tier in Spain, he would last one game and be told, pack your bags, you're back, you're gone. You're gone. Because he's not an NBA player. He was never an NBA player. Like, when he first kind of came through, there were some times, like, he didn't make a fool of himself at times on the court. But there are guys that aren't good enough that don't make a fool of themselves on the court. Like, again, I've coached guys, I've played with guys that have played really, really high-level college ball, played over in Puerto Rico and stuff, played with NBA level players, and they don't make a fool of themselves. They haven't made a fool of themselves on the floor. And I'm like, these are guys that are playing in the off-season for those leagues in the Irish second tier. Like, that's the reality of pro basketball. And that's the level Bronny James is at. Like, he's not going to make a fool of himself on the floor because he can play the sport. And yeah, like, it's annoying that people are now pretending that being like, oh, it's about the development of Bronny James. Man, Bronny James was not one of the, if there were 300 players that applied for the draft, he might not have been in the top 250 players. Like, there are legitimately guys currently playing D2, D3 basketball that are better than Bronny James. That is a fact. There are guys currently playing, I'm confident that I'm saying there are guys currently playing in Ireland better than Bronny James. There are guys probably currently playing in Albania better than Bronny James. And you can see people being like, oh, it's not good for Bronny James. The reality is that what would have been good for Bronny James' development as a pro basketball player, the problem is that the level of pro basketball, even after 4 years of college, Bronny James would have been at the level for as a non-shooting 6'1" guard who is not freakishly athletic, does not have a quick first step, is a passable defender, is not a playmaker, has no handle. The level of play where Bronny James would be going after 4 years of college, I'm not joking when I say this. If his name was not LeBron James Jr., he would have, after that first year at USC, he would probably be transferring to either a mid-major or a D2 school. And not only that, at the end of the 4 years, because of his archetype, because of his height, because of his measurements, almost certainly, even after 4 years of developing in college, he would be going to a league where he is making $2,000 a month if his name wasn't LeBron James Jr. It's never been about developing Bronny to make him the best player. He was never going to be an NBA player. He is never going to be an NBA player. So people being like, oh, he should stay with the G League long term. That's not the point. If there was any hope of him being an NBA player, I'd be saying, yeah, keep him with the G League, get him to develop, and maybe he might become an NBA player. But he's not. The reality is that the Lakers currently have him as a sideshow. He is a sideshow. He's not a basketball player. The reason why he's only playing home games is because people will buy tickets to watch Bronny James stink it up in the G League, and then they will buy tickets to watch the father-son duo and watch Bronny sit on the bench so that they can chant, we want Bronny for the entire game at home games. That is why Bronny James is in the NBA. Bronny James is not in the NBA to play basketball. Bronny James is the equivalent of when Calvin Cambridge, obviously he got the Michael Jordan shoes and became a hooper. He is the equivalent of a guy who won of a celebrity who won a competition to be an NBA player. That is what he's the equivalent of. And we got to be honest about it. Nothing about this is to develop Bronny James. It is to make the Lakers as much money as they can off Bronny James, because he is not only not now an NBA player, he's never going to be an NBA player. And that is not a knock on Bronny James himself. Because the reality is that, I hate to say this, nobody would say no in his situation. If you are not an NBA level player and you're being told you're going to be drafted, would you say no? Obviously not. None of us would. That's not on Bronny James. Bronny James did not make himself a 5-star recruit when the reality is he should have probably been a 2 to 3-star recruit. Bronny James did not make himself a high school All-American. Bronny James did not make himself go and play at USC when he just was the mid-major level player. He got the offer, he chose it. He could have chose literally anywhere. If you've got all these high major colleges, you're going to take one of them. You're going to take one of them and play. Bronny James was told he's going to make the NBA. If you're told you're going to make the league and not be a two-way player and be signed on a 4-year deal, I'm sorry, every single one of us is saying yes. So I have no problem with Bronny James. What I do have a problem with is I have a problem with the Lakers organization. I have a problem with LeBron James himself. I have a problem with the whole situation around him, because it's everyone's fault but Bronny. Like, obviously, I think so many of us would have so much respect for Bronny James if he just came out and said, look, I'm not good enough right now. I'm going to work till I am good enough. And even if it's unbelievably unlikely that he does, if he wanted to make it by himself, cool. But the problem is, again, he's LeBron James Jr. He's not going to go to freaking, I'm trying to think, the best, highest level league he'd be good enough to play in, where the conditions are going to be not really nice, is probably like, let's just say he goes and plays in the BBL or whatever it's called now, the Superleague in England. He wouldn't be a great player in that league, but he'd be a guy. He'd be fine. He'd survive in the Superleague in England. So let's say he goes to the Super League in England, goes plays with London Lions, lives it up in London. He would only be his contract, he actually might make a bit of money because he's Bronny James Jr., but if it was purely based on his skill, he'd be making like $3,000 a month at most. At most. And that's the problem, is that why would you go from being LeBron's kid, living in a multi-million-dollar mansion, having the most comfortable life in the world, to going and slumming it in low-level pro leagues, which is the level he's at, where some guys are sleeping on couches, where it's sometimes 3 imports to a 1-bedroom apartment. Like, some of these low-level pros really have to slum it out. And the unfortunate thing is that that's the level of Bronny. If Bronny James wants to, quote-unquote, earn it and work his way up, yeah, that's pretty much it.